It is a pleasure for me to introduce my dear friend Rachel, who is living and working in the United States now. But when we invited her to be part of the fest, she accepted immediately. Well, people who know Rachel should know that. Rachel Lamicq has a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing with a minor in Spanish. She's a full writer, and her teaching experience goes from teaching literature at the university, especially in our program. She was a teacher of our program some years ago. She has also been a monitor teacher at different summer and winter camps for young learners organized by our program. Um, and now in her current job, she is a teacher, but she's teaching from a library. She's going to explain it later on. And she's teaching literature again, but not to adults, but she's teaching children in a distance way. She's here basically to show us the value of knowing two languages and some aspects related to distance learning that can sound familiar to what is happening to our way of teaching nowadays. You are more than welcome, dear Rachel.
Thank you so much, Marian. And wow, what a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. I'm so excited. First, I want to apologize in case you hear background noise. I'm coming from Oregon in the United States, and we just went into a new COVID lockdown today. So good times. I have my two sons at home with me. So, but I'm so excited to be here with you. The Universidad de La Serena has a very dear place in my heart. I see so many great people that I got the pleasure to work with before. As Marian was saying, in 2007, I was an English teaching assistant on a Fulbright grant. And I had the wonderful honor of being sent to La Serena. And Professor Elvis was my mentor when I first came, and just I fell in love with La Serena, and I ended up staying for almost 8 years. So I came for 1 year, ended up staying for almost 8. I ended up marrying my college pololo, who was a student of Pedagogía en Castellano y Filosofía. So we are a complete ULS family. So to get started, I thought that we could do a little dinámica, because I know that in Chile right now it is quite late. And so I'm going to, pardon me just a moment. And so I thought that we could get started, like, to warm up a little bit so that we have some energy. If you guys are willing to participate, give me a thumbs up. Are we willing to participate? Yes? Okay, so it's really quick. So normally I do this to start off an English lesson or a story time. And so I'll say, if you want to hear a story or if you want to learn some English, but this time it's if you want to hear a presentation. So if you want to hear a presentation, clap your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, clap your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, clap your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, raise your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, raise your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, raise your hands. If you want to hear a presentation, take a deep breath. If you want to hear a presentation, take a deep breath. If you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, if you want to hear a presentation, take a deep breath. And so that way we just did the conditional, and we did a little bit of mindfulness at the end with taking a deep breath. And speaking of which, hold on just one moment, because it sounds like I need to turn on the iPad for my child.
Has it happened to you when you're working from home the noisy next door, or the room next to
If you
you
want a presentation disappear.
disappear, right?
El camión de los berlines.
Yeah, Jimena, that is my lesson.
La otra vez pasó por mi casa, Miss.
Sí,
Acá en
lo mandé
Coquimbo,
para allá yo,
Fontanilla.
Javier. Yo lo mandé a tu
Ah,
casa
por
y
eso.
ella hacía mucha bulla en la mía.
O los
I have,
vecinos construyendo.
yeah, I have my neighbors. They're building. I think they're building and rebuilding their house. I don't know how many times, but they're so noisy.
Okay, so I'm back. And
Don't
to be
worry.
honest, I was saying this because this is what online teaching is right now, right? I mean, some of us have kids at home, some of us have other things going on. So we just keep going because that's what we do. So thank you for doing that Dinamica with me. Like I said, that way you can kind of get the conditional in, it gets the kids loosened up. And then at the end, every time I do this with my kiddos, we always end with, if you want to hear a story, if you want to learn some English, take a deep breath, because that gets them centered, it gets them into a mindfulness state, and that's a really great way to get started, right? So thank you for doing that with me. I appreciate it. And so to go back into some of the things that I've been doing, I want to talk a little bit about what I've done professionally, and then also just a little bit about what resources are being used currently for online classes here in the United States, because I thought that might be helpful for people. And so what I'm doing currently is I work at a public library, and I do several different things. We started out doing Facebook Live because that was what was available to us. And so I was teaching classes, but with no reaction, let's say, like you just are putting content out there. And so that was very interesting, but I did a bilingual story time where I would introduce vocabulary and through songs like we just did, or through stories. And then we would have, I would put like a little thing in the chat of like a question that parents could work on with their kids. And so that was really fun, but it didn't have the interaction of Zoom or Google Meet or one of those. So I started to do a Zoom program. I do one in Spanish and I do one in English, and it has a multicultural focus. I love so much what has been said about that. We're really, as language teachers, that's something so special and beautiful about the profession, that we build connections between people, and that's what our job is. And so taking advantage of the fact that now that we are online, you can have someone who's a guest in your class from England. You can have someone that's a guest in your class from Australia, depending on how forgiving they are with the time difference. And so that's what I've been doing, is inviting people from different countries and from different cultural backgrounds to do guest spots, so to speak, in my classes. And so that's been a really fun thing, and something that I've just found over social media, over asking friends, like, do you have a cousin who lives somewhere else, and that sort of thing. And so you build connections, and it makes the feeling of isolation for kiddos a lot easier, because maybe they just hear what their families are saying, maybe they just see what their families are like, and so it gives them that window to other realities and to other possibilities. So that's what I have been doing currently. And one thing that I've been really kind of excited about, and it's been talked a lot about in the United States in education, and I see that it's happening in Chile, because the videos that you're producing are just amazing. Like some of the things you're doing are just wonderful. And it's this idea, I could get old school, I didn't do a PowerPoint, but I wanted to share this word with you guys, edutainment. Have you guys heard that? It's a new thing that people have been talking about, and it's the idea of education that is entertaining. Because as we all know, with a lot of our students, our competition is YouTube, TikTok, whatever platform is popular this moment. And so we really need to think of education as a form of entertainment, because if it's not engaging, kiddos are not going to show up. It's just that easy. And so we can either fight that or we can embrace it and be creative and think about different ways. And I see you're already doing that, which is so fantastic. And also I just think it's really important to focus on the things that we can't control. Marian and I were talking a little bit about, same in the US as I'm sure in Chile, it's an issue sometimes that you're in a class and no one has their cameras turned on, right? Or maybe they're not engaging and you're not sure if you're reaching the students. And so to think about the things that we can control, like I don't know necessarily why that student has their video off. There's many reasons that can be, and I don't control those reasons, but I do control what my class is like. I control how fun my class is. I control the energy level that I bring to it. And so one thing that is new that people have been doing here, which I thought is kind of weird, but maybe people will like it, is that several of the public schools, speaking of public education, had a problem that very few students were turning on their cameras and very few students were engaging. And when I say very few, like maybe 30% of the students were participating in an entire school. And so some teachers started doing this thing where they would do classes once a week that were review classes, but with a twist. So I'm going to show you my twist. This is Sarah, the Triceratops, and sometimes I put on this mask to teach a review class. So I would have my mask on and I'm going over whatever it is, the past tense, whatever you want to do. And the thing is that you allow all your students to wear a mask too. And it sounds like such a silly thing, but it was amazing how many more students would turn their camera on and participate if they could have a mask on. And it kind of became like a competition. Like some of the kids who were really into it and creative would like make their own mask. Some of them would use masks from Halloween or from theater. You always have the one student who's like, "Profe, do you like my mask? Is my mask cool? Profe, do you like my mask?" Like you always have that student, but still it's just a really nice way to kind of think outside the box and maybe get more engagement from your class. And those review class, you do it for a review class so that you can be a little bit more relaxed and that hopefully more students are coming and getting more material at once is the idea. Am I going too fast? I'm sorry, I tend to be a fast talker. So another thing that I wanted to talk about is just how, I don't know how familiar you are with the person Patch Adams. Have you guys heard of that person before? And there's a movie, etc. And I really like to think of teachers, all of us are Patch Adams in a way, because especially right now, because our students are going through a lot. We're going through a lot too. And so I like to think about my classes as there will be different levels of what you learn, right? I mean, some students have more aptitude naturally than others, etc. But you can bring a little joy to all of your students, right? And if you're bringing that joy, then they're going to tune in, then they're going to listen, and they will want to engage with you. And so I just wanted to put that out there as maybe another way of thinking about doing classes, is that what joy am I bringing with this for myself and for my kids or for my students, for adult students as well, because we need some joy right now too, right? I asked I said my husband's a teacher. He currently teaches at a public middle school. He teaches séptimo and octavo básico, 7th and 8th grade. And so I asked some teachers and friends of his, like, what resources are you using to better reach students over distance? And so I wanted to share those with you. Again, I am very old school, so they are the technology people. I am not so much, but I wanted to share these with you because I thought they might be useful. Some of these you may already know, and if you can see them all right, and I will put them in the chat later. But Kahoot, and you can give a thumbs up if you know some of these. We'll do a little audience participation. So Kahoot's been around for a bit, right? Jbrary.com. If you are an elementary teacher of English, I highly recommend this website. They have all sorts of, it's actually done by 2 librarians, but there's all sorts of songs and activities and things that you can do with kiddos. They're awesome. YouTube read alouds. So on YouTube, there are all sorts of read alouds and that professional people are doing, which maybe you have seen. And the hashtag own voices is super important here in the US. I hope it becomes important everywhere, which is the idea that people from different ethnicities and people from different countries are reading about their own cultures. So you will read an author who is from, for example, the Caribbean, who is from, let's say, the Dominican Republic, and they'll be reading a book about the Dominican Republic in English, but there will be that cultural component, which is really important. Something that will save your life, I don't know if maybe you guys already know about this, but slidesgo.com is a wonderful resource for making presentations online. It has a whole bunch of templates that are already set up, and it's very much geared towards educators. It's free, that's a cool thing. Nearpod.com, if you guys know that one. So that's a great resource as well. Kamiapp.com, if you guys know that one with a K, kamiapp.com. That's great for working with PDFs and classes. And also, I just wanted to put my personal email up there, which I'll put this on the chat as well. But if you guys have any questions or would like me to get you in contact with native English speakers here to do guest bits on your classes, like, I am happy to do that. I think it's a wonderful thing that we're able to do as a digital global community. So I think that's about it for me. I went really quickly, you guys. I'm sorry. I'm nervous that my kiddos are going to bust in again. But yes, I look forward to your questions. And again, just a big applause to everyone who does all the great work that you're doing. And everyone who's studying, I know this is can be an intimidating time to go into education, but you have chosen such a beautiful profession, and it's just so exciting to see what's going to happen. And if all of this has taught us anything, it's how connected we all are and how connected we can be over these means of technology. So yeah, go out there and get them.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Rachel. I think it was a very helpful presentation. I didn't know about all those sites, and I hope I don't need to use them that much in the future. That when I graduate, we won't be in any pandemic or anything like that. But for homeworks or that kind of thing, exercising at home, I think they can be quite helpful, right? So now we're gonna do the same dynamic as before. If anyone has a question, a comment they want to say, please raise your hand and we're gonna give you the word and we're gonna listen to you.
Oh, one thing I didn't mention too, sorry, I probably should have. It just has so happened with random things in my career. I actually have taught English from baby age, done activities for babies up through being at the university. I taught for Turismo, Pedagogía en Inglés, and Traducción. So yeah, ask me if you have a range of different age groups that you're interested in teaching, I'm more than happy to speak to that.
Amazing. I think Miss Marian had raised her hand.
Yes, Rachel, I was about to ask you if you could share a little bit your experience now, what you're doing now as the way you are teaching and where you're working right now, because it's a different thing.
Oh, sure. So when I was a full-time family liaison, when I first moved back to the States, and family liaison is a different profession that is very new in the United States, which they work in public schools primarily, and they're there to be a connection between families coming from different cultures to orient them in the school system. It was a very full-time job, and so when I had children, I started working part-time at a public library. And as a part of the public library, I do some outreach and then also some things in the library. So I'm not a librarian by profession. I don't have that degree. But since I have a background in teaching, I do these online classes. So I do, or story times. So one of my story times that I did was bilingual, and it was geared towards ages 0 through 6. So before coming to school, and we did a lot of pre-literacy tips with that, showing parents through what I did, how they could work on literacy at home with their kiddos. And that was bilingual. So the idea was, because it's so important, I think, from a young age that you get that exposure to different languages. And then after that, I did, and to this day, I have been doing a Spanish language story time where we do, where we read stories and do crafts with kids. And we do some early literacy tips, like specifically teaching the parents, but mostly it's just showing kind of by example. And then I also do I say we because I do that together with one of my colleagues. And then I do a multicultural program for students, kindergarten through 2nd grade. That is a program where I read own voices stories. I read stories from different countries that have been translated into English, or that are written in English, but by authors who identify with different cultures. So whether that is an indigenous culture or from another country, and talking about the immigrant experience, because that is a very important topic here in the United States. And so it gives the students a chance to meet people from other places, because I have guest speakers who come on, and then they just get to talk amongst themselves, and I try to step back and let them have the conversation. And so it's a neat thing that kiddos get to share about different traditions from their homes, different aspects of their home culture. And that program I do primarily in English.
Thank you, Rachel. I love that idea of having guest speakers. Maybe it could be among teachers, your colleagues and our colleagues here. It could be a nice experience to have, let's say, monthly meetings, or maybe one meeting per semester, I don't know, depending on the time. But having a multicultural meeting of teachers of English or Spanish would be great. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so much fun. It really has been fun. The only limiting factor is the time limit. Like, you have to, Australia's rough, and like sometimes people in Europe, it can be rough depending on where they're at. But yeah, it's really fun, and it's a great way to open up the world to kiddos. I mean, if we can't travel super freely like right now, it's a great way to bring the world into people's homes.
That is our next task, yeah, and our next challenge as a organizer of things, okay? And the group of students who are organizing and teachers who are organizing this English Fest are very creative and hardworking, let me say that. And so I think it's going to work. If there is any comment or question you would like to make.
Miss, we can, no, I think Jimena has a
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I'm thinking that nowadays in Chile, one of our biggest challenges in education is multiculturalism. And I know the states has their own issues about this, but they've been dealing with this a much longer time, right? So maybe I would like to ask you, what could you recommend to us for us to promote tolerance inside the classroom? Because Chile now is having a huge influx of immigrants, right? So so we need to create a welcoming environment, but how can we do that since it's such a new topic for us?
That's a fantastic question. I would say that it is very important to talk about it, because it's not something that for a long time in the United States, and I think that's part of what we are living now. If you have seen the news of some things that have been happening in the United States of late, there was kind of this idea that we wouldn't talk about race, or we wouldn't talk about differences, and everyone's welcome and everyone's the same. And that's not true. It's true that everyone's welcome. It is not true that everyone's the same. And so the idea isn't to get rid of those differences or to wash over them. The idea is to celebrate them, to talk about them in a respectful way, and to show difference as something to be interested about, to be curious about, and to be respectful of. And the way that we do that is by educating ourselves first, and looking at our own biases, and then taking that and showing it to our kids, right? And that's why I love Own Voices, because I can say, this is how people are, this is how life is in such and such country, but it's so much more impactful for them to talk a couple minutes with someone from that country, or to show them a video of people in that country showing themselves, if that makes sense. And so the idea of being very authentic, and when given the opportunity, to listen, to give a space for people to tell their own stories, I think is very important as well. And this is a very long topic. We could do our own thing on that, but I mean, it's cultural, it's socioeconomic, etc. But I think to get started is just exposure is very important, because we fear what we don't know. And so to at least start presenting kiddos with whether they be videos, books, podcasts, whatever you have at your disposal, but to start getting them thinking about different cultures and about different perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. I love what you said about celebrating difference. That's not something that you hear that often here. And this reminds me that recently in TikTok, I saw there's a hashtag of native stories, I think, and it's great. So there's this huge wave of TikTokers who are exposing their experiences as Native Americans in the States. And I I'm not a TikTok user because I'm not that young, let's say, but suddenly I was lost for half an hour just watching TikToks about Native Americans. Yeah, so that reminded me of that. Thank you so much. I'll keep thinking about this.
Oh, I really appreciate the question, because it is, I mean, it's for teachers worldwide. I think it's a topic, because we're kind of the frontline people of having that platform to being able to share in a respectful way with kids. So thank you for your question.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and everyone who had a question or participated. And now